everybody, welcome to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the living card game. And my name is Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride, as usual.
And today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Citadel Plate. It's a 4-cost attachment with the armor and item trait, and you can attach to a hero. It's restricted. The hero then gets plus 4 hit points. And so, Grant, what's your kind of initial take on the Citadel Plate?
Going back a couple of years before I had any real inkling of the game, I thought the Citadel Plate was only useful on Gimli because it buffed his hit points so that you could get an ungodly amount of damage on him. And quite frankly, it's expensive if you're running either a tri-sphere deck or a dual sphere deck. For 4 hit points is great, but it is a costly investment. You could pull out 2 allies, those 4 resources, and it's like, well, what do you want? Do you want the hit points or do you want the allies? And that comes down to what the board state's like. And for me, do I need it now, or can I play that later and place an ally now to help clear up the board a bit? So that's what it comes down to for me. The restricted attachments. I don't think that a hero should have 2 restricted attachments because of the fact that you've already got an armor piece on for, say, your chest plate, like the Citadel Plate. You can't then go and you shouldn't be able to then put another one on.
Do you think you should have limited 1 per character? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, 1 per hero or 1 per character. It just begs the question, where's the logic about that? I mean, I can understand that people would want to tank Gimli up with 8 hit points from 2 Citadel Plates. But thematically, you cannot do that because you cannot sit and stack layer upon layer of armor on top of you because you'd just be weighed down. You couldn't walk.
Right. And I'm going to just restate exactly what you said, but it's a conflict that I have between gameplay and theme. Yeah, I mean, in gameplay, it makes sense to have it restricted and only be able to put 2 Citadel Plates or whatever restricted thing there is. But it doesn't make sense in my head. I think that the original idea was that you can only have 2 restricted attachments regardless. That it can be a restricted Citadel Plate and then the restricted Dagger of Westerness. It doesn't have to be 2 of the same restricted.
Yeah.
And so, I think that was kind of the game maker's idea. And then if you made the choice to beef up his defense, I think it was a kind of a natural balance that they had to do, because you're exactly what the card says, restricted from having more than 2 of those specific attachments, and so you have to make that choice. It's just another way that the game forces you to make choices. So, with Gimli, you don't have to make the choice because every time he takes damage, he gets extra attack. But if you put the Citadel Plate onto a different hero, all you're doing is beefing up their hit points. Is that really worth putting a second Citadel Plate, or would you rather beef up the attack with, some other restricted attachment like a Dagger of Westerness or
a Dwarven Axe?
Blade of Gaunt. That's the choice.
Even looking at the card, it doesn't look like it's in an armory where the flavor text states, it says, go to the armory of the Citadel and get you there the livery and gear of the tower. The way that's standing, it's in a closet with an old set of armor sitting on a stand. Where's the rest of the gear?
So when I look at that card art, I always thought it was put in a place of honor in the armory. Like, that's the pile of all the non-restricted, all the crap armor is put off to the side, and then this is on its stand, sitting in a place of armor, kind of lit. That's how I always envisioned it. It's funny that you're like, it's off in a broom closet somewhere.
Well, that's what it looks like. It looks like it's just been shoved in a broom closet out the way.
Yeah.
And it's like, Well, hang on a minute. It's restricted.
Right.
Yet you're saying the flavor text is saying go to the armory and get your gear. Where's
Right.
the rest of the gear?
Right.
These days, unless I'm running Tactics Gimli, it's not a card that I have put in many of me decks since. I mean, even the Hobbit decks, I haven't put it in, even though they would benefit massively from a huge hit point buff like that. But it's just not worth the cost these in the newer games, because you'll be wanting to get your allies out, you'll be wanting to get your weapon attachments out to go fight the Nazgul, fight the thing in the depth, or whatever it is you've got to do,
The
or get
Watcher in
the
the water. Right.
yeah, or get the allies on the board to deal with some of the big nasties like the Hill Troll or what have you. For me, it's just one of those cards now that when I am up to date on the card packs, I think it's just going to be one of those cards that sit in its binder when the time comes, because right now it's a great card for me just being pretty much out of the core set and into the Dwarrowhouse cycle. But I can't see us using it for much longer. There's other cards that are, for me, better for the cost. I mean, you're paying one resource for one hit point, you kind of complain for that, but
watch me.
So expensive. It's so expensive considering you get the global effect from either Khazad-dûm or Overhill and Underhill with
Hardy leadership. You can
Hardy leadership.
Build a pony.
Yeah.
I think boots from Erebor, which we just did an episode on. I like that way better than Citadel Plate. I know that I'm cutting you off a little bit, but let me just say what I wanted to say about this is because you just recently said that 4 cost for 4 hit points. The problem I have is kind of the hit point versus defense mechanic. A hit point is really only good one time, unless you have healing in your deck, which some people don't run healing, and healing is outside of the tactic sphere. There's very little stuff, as we've mentioned in, I think, Boromir's episode and a couple other episodes, that tactics is really just kind of uniquely attack and defend. The hit points in general are just kind of a one-off. Once you lose it, you have to then regain it somehow through other card effects. I would much prefer to spend the 4 on something that's going to increase defense, which can then be used time and time and time again, and is not just a one-off. And so, in my opinion, you're exactly right. It's super expensive. There's not very many attachments that are worth more than 2.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. And I've just done a check for all attachments so far in the game that have more than 4 cost, and there isn't any. And there's about 5 or 6 cards that have a cost of 4. You've got Citadel Plate from the core set. You've got Resourceful from Watcher in the Water.
Right.
Path of Need, Book of Eldercar, Map of Ernil.
But all of those you can do something to reduce the amount you pay for them.
And then you've got Sword of Thane, which is also 4 cost.
Right.
Attached to a ally belonging to any sphere of influence, attached character loses the ally card type and gains the hero type.
And that's well worth 4 in certain decks. Yeah. But Citadel Plate, overcost.
Looking at all of them, I agree it is a hefty cost. But if you've got to remember, this was back in the core set, the 4 mono decks that got you through the first quest, and then you looked at branching out. Now, when you're running a monosphere deck, those 4 resources aren't that big of a deal.
There's not very many cards that specifically pair with this guide to make the Citadel Plate worth it, other than Gimli. I think Gimli from the core set, and even Glowin to give him some extra hit points to get some more. I think
resources.
It gives some more resources, but then you have to run Dual Sphere, which goes back to your original point.
Return to Mirkwood cycle of adventure packs. It's useful.
There's a lot of trolls in there, and the Citadel Plate, your eyes get so big with it at the very beginning of playing the game.
where you've got to deal with those big beefy enemies that can hit you for a god awful amount, I don't think I'll be using it.
Yeah, I've beaten Conflict of Carrick using, not Citadel Plate, using just elves, just going at it.
But yeah, I get what you're saying, and like I say, Citadel Plate, not worth it now. David, it seems this is your card. What would you ring?
I have to put Citadel Plate up at 8 rings. Too overpriced. I don't like for that card. I don't like just having hit points. If it's split hit points and defense, I'd be happier with it. I like that it's part of the tactic sphere. It fits thematically with it. But yeah, it's just a card that I don't even look at anymore. How about you? What would you ring him?
The same at an 8.
Wow.
Ed. It's too much for the bang that you get. It's not enough bang for the buck. In all honesty, I would like to have seen it in a neutral sphere, so that you could have used it in any sphere. It was great, but now it's just like, yeah, it can sit in the binder.
Yeah.
So that's why I give it an astounding 8 rings. So join us next time where we'll be discussing Faramir, the leadership ally from the core set.
Have a great day, everybody.